Something I realized recently, and I feel doesn't get said often enough, is that friendships, just like romantic relationships, can end. When a romance ends, there's usually a breakup, tears, closure, but friendships? We rarely talk about them ending. They just fade, they drift, they slip through your fingers without even realizing it. And honestly, that kind of loss can hurt just as much as a breakup, maybe even more, because no one ever tells you how to grieve a friendship, let alone that you can. When a friendship starts to unravel, it's rarely dramatic. Nobody that sits you down and says, "Hey, I don't think we should be friends anymore." Instead, it feels more like missed texts, excuses about being busy, conversations that used to be easy and exciting now feel like you're catching up with a stranger all the time. And soon, all that's left are two people reminiscing about the past, because the present doesn't have much to offer anymore, and nostalgia becomes the glue holding things together. And I've talked about nostalgia and how important it is to treasure the memories that you have, but you also need something to look forward to. And any kind of relationship, a friendship too, they also need that. And they need honesty, openness, adaptability. Without that, they stagnate. And a relationship that stagnates isn't a healthy one. Instead of living together, you start living next to each other. I've recently ended a friendship because of this. This was someone that I've met online. Let's call them Tom. And we've known each other for almost 15 years. We only really hung out to game. And when me or a mutual friend, let's call the mutual friend Steve, tried bringing up a more personal topic or wanted to talk about things going on in our lives, Tom would change the subject back to the game that we were playing. And whenever asked about it, he would say that he doesn't feel like talking about himself just because we would do it, and that he's a rather private person. And I can respect that. And at the time, I didn't question it much either. I was a very different person back then. I mean, I was like 14 or 15, and I simply enjoyed the time spent together. However, back in 2016, I believe, there was a falling out between me and Tom, and we didn't really talk much for a while. Steve was off doing his own thing, he moved to an entirely different country for his studies, and the contact between the three of us just stagnated. It's only because of Steve that I've actually tried reconnecting, and to this day, I still talk with Steve. Sometimes we do catch up on what happened during our week, but there's plenty of room for other things to be talked about too, about what's going on in our lives, about fears or worries, and there's a much deeper connection now than there used to be. However, I also started to question in what way I consider Tom to be a friend. Because all of the issues that existed back then were still present. And I'm including myself in this too. I think often we like to put the blame on just one person, but in this case, I held some responsibility in this as well. And Tom used to talk about how he considered us brothers. He would sometimes say that we share a very deep bond and how we've known each other for so long now. But if we were brothers or even friends, I feel like I would know what he did for a living, what other interests he had outside of gaming and Star Wars. I feel like I would have known that he got married, and that one of us should have at least tried apologizing for the falling out, or bring it up at least. Neither of us did. And I realized after some time thinking about it that I wasn't the same person anymore. And that maybe at the time I did, but right now I definitely didn't consider myself to be a brother, but also not a friend. The history was still there, sure, but it started to feel like a wall instead of a bridge. Too much had changed. So here's what I've learned. It's okay for friendships to end. It doesn't mean that the friendship wasn't real or that it wasn't valuable. It simply means that that chapter is over. And just like a breakup, sometimes what we need is closure. Friendships aren't failures when they end. And when they end, it's painful, it's confusing, but through that process, we gain closure. And closure isn't just for romance. Friendships deserve that too. Thanks for watching.